Growing up, I adored the Metroid series, and I loved playing Super Metroid for the SNES. I've replayed that game so many times, and Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance is another one of my favorites. And I was stoked to hear Nintendo make another 2D Metroid for the 3DS, even though it was a remake of Return of Samus. Metroid 2 was black and white and it didn't have a map, so a remake was heavily welcomed. However, with all my love for Metroid, I never played the Prime series. So, with the announcement of Prime 4, I thought it would be a great time to go back and play the Prime games. I now own the original copies of the games, but I'll be playing the GameCube version of Prime 1 on Dolphin, using upscaling to make the game look just a whole lot nicer. The game starts off with Samus receiving a distress signal. As the good person she is, she decides to check it out. She lands the ship and finally takes a step into 3D. And how does she feel in 3D? Well, awful. It just doesn't feel like Metroid. Samus here, she controls like a tank. It's a one analog control scheme and the C-stick is used to swap your beams. Pushing up and down will move Samus forward and back. Left and right will pan the camera. You can lock onto targets with the left trigger, and to aim freely, you'll have to use the right trigger. Now to be fair, this game was made in 2002, before FPSs were fully standardized, but oh my, the shooting. Switching between your beams takes way too long, and you can't spam your missiles like you can in 2D Metroids. With the controls and shooting mechanics, it just makes Samus feel sluggish and clunky. She's not as agile as her 2D games. And sadly, this idea of sluggish gameplay isn't only tied to Samus, but also the level, enemy, and boss designs. Besides weapons, this game brings back the scan visor from Super Metroid. However, this time around, it gives Samus the ability to scan enemies and learn how to defeat them, which is pretty neat. It also allows Samus to interface with elevators and other machines. During the journey, Samus can pick up other visors. Now, the visors have to be my least favorite part of the game. I personally don't like the X-ray visor. Just look at it. It's not pleasant to look at or play with. It just feels like a nuisance rather than fun. The thermal visor is used to see heat signatures of invisible objects. However, you'll run into other enemies or objects that are invisible, but the thermal visor is useless. You'll have to use the X-ray visor instead. The X-ray visor always felt unneeded and you could just have the thermal visor for it. But hey, Chozo ghosts don't give off heat signatures, so alright. But some things that Prime does so well are the environments. The rain hitting Samus's visor in the Talon overworld, the cold atmosphere of the Pandera drifts. Coupled with the music, it's all beautifully done. Now yes, the environments are heavily inspired by Super Metroid. Heck, the opening is exactly like Super Metroid. Samus answering a distress signal, running into Ridley on a space station, following him to a planet and lands in a rainy overworld, and to her right is a crashed ship, and below is just a hellscape. But hey, every Metroid game follows the same tropes. But another thing that this game does so well is the puzzles. Samus, like in the other games, can find weapon upgrades hidden around the world. Many of these were a treat to find and hunt down. They provide a great break from the run and gun sections. This upgrade required you to perform a double bomb jump. This technique is common in 2D Metroids. Now, I don't know if the game teaches you how to do this in data logs, but it does teach it to you in the demo that plays after the menu. It shows you how to do it and that it is possible in this game. And I think that's pretty neat. It's a real clever way to show off a secret tech. Now granted, probably most players will never see this demo, but hey, I still like it. And now for the story of Metroid Prime. Now there isn't much to spoil about the story. The story isn't really that in-depth. But hey, here's your spoiler warning. After landing on Talon 4, Samus learns that the planet used to be inhabited by Chozo, the same race that raised her when she was little. The planet was previously struck by a meteorite that was carrying a substance called Phazon, a highly toxic material. The Chozo built a temple on top of the impact crater, locking it behind 12 Chozo artifacts. These artifacts are scattered across the world. The space pirates, being all evil and junk, they want to harness that power of Phazon. They start shoving it in anything they can. Plant life, animal life, heck. They even start shoving themselves with that stuff. Samus will encounter a Omega pirate, all juiced up on Phazon, and after she defeats it, she gets crushed by it. This infuses her suit with Phazon and gives her the Phazon suit. With this new suit, she's now immune to the toxic effects of Phazon, which will now allow her to enter the impact crater, which is completely filled with that stuff. And now she has to collect the 12 Chozo artifacts. And that stuff requires so much backtracking. And I mean a lot of backtracking. But once she collects all 12 of the artifacts, she can now unlock the door and go down into the impact crater. But then she gets interrupted by Ridley. Now we finally get to fight Ridley after meeting him in the space station at the start of the game. After a long and annoying battle with Ridley, more on that later. And then Samus can now enter a portal which will take her into the impact crater. There she meets Metroid Prime, the source of all of the Phazon. As Samus battles Metroid Prime, it will continue to burrow down deeper and deeper into the planet. Before its final breath, it rips Samus away from her new shiny suit. Oh well. And that's the end. Or is it? Now I want to talk about the bosses in this game. I find a lot of the bosses in this game to be very bland and boring, and some of them to even be very annoying to fight, especially Ridley. In past Metroids, bosses like Craig, Phantoon, Nightmare, they were fun and just plain cool to fight against. Kraid was this giant beast that would shoot, what, finger missiles? Phantoon was a ghost that would disappear in and out and shoot fireballs at you, and he was pretty difficult to defeat. And Ridley has always been pretty fun to fight. You just spam a ton of missiles into him. However, in this game, a lot of the bosses, they drag on way too long. They're all pretty boring in design. You fight a plant, a bunch of rocks, an annoying Omega pirate that just takes so many bullets to kill, and Ridley, he's just so The thing about the Ridley fight is that he will swoop in and then fly away, leaving you just to watch him for like, I don't know, 10 seconds as he makes his way back to the center. And then he drops some bombs and then leaves again for another 10 seconds. And then it's just a bunch of waiting. And then finally, once you shoot him enough, you like destroy his wings and he falls down. And then for that point, you're supposed to shoot him in the mouth in order to reveal his weak point so you can attack that. But his hand, oh my god, his hand blocks everything. It's just, get that hand out of here. It's just, really is just not fun. However, one boss that is done right, I believe, is Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime requires all your upgrades. Well, most of them. It requires your beam upgrades and at the end, it requires your visors. Metroid Prime likes to switch between different forms, which require you to use different beams to attack it. And then once you weaken enough, the essence of Metroid Prime comes out, and then you have to use your different visors to attack it. And then you also get to use a Hyper Beam, which is a lot like the one you use in Super Metroid, which is really cool. And the fact that it encapsulates all your other upgrades, it's a pretty neat fight. It also kind of drags on a bit too much, and a couple of phases are annoying, especially when you have to use the Ice Beam, because the Ice Beam is goddamn slow. But besides that, I think that's probably one of the best boss fights in the game. Now with all of this said, all my gripes with the game and the things I do enjoy about the game, I don't know, maybe I'll just stick to 2D Metroids. Metroid Prime doesn't seem like the game for me. It's too slow and sluggish, and to be fair, it is its first game and its first step into 3D. So maybe the second one is better. Maybe I'll be back for the second one. And hey, maybe they'll port the whole trilogy to the Switch and I'll play a HD 2 analog control scheme Metroid Prime game, and I think that would be fantastic. So Nintendo, get on it. And thank you for watching and listening. And Nintendo, please make